morning, James. Good morning, First Church. It's
Good morning,
nice to
Chris.
be here today. Nice to see your smiling face. This is a pleasant surprise for many, I'm sure. Everyone loves to get an extra video showing your smiling face. We have some big news we want to share, and we wanted to take the opportunity to have a little, as best we can, a face-to-face conversation with James as he shares his news. And without any further ado, James, I'd love to invite you to share what's going on in your life right now, and bring the congregation in on this exciting happening.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I would love to do this face to face in a different way, but I think because of the season of the pandemic, it's really challenging right now. But I want to share that I am going to be moving to Biloxi, Mississippi, which is on the coast of Mississippi, and taking on the executive director position of Back Bay Mission, which is a nationwide mission of the United Church of Christ, located on the coast of Mississippi. So I'm really excited about this, and yet it's probably with some incredibly great sadness that I announced this to the community. But we wanted the community to know, and also to know that God is going to be with y'all here at First Church, and God is going to be with me, and God is going to be with us as we journey. So that's kind of the big news. And Chris is just going to ask a few questions. Chris is the moderator of kind of community and care for our First Church, one of our 4 moderators, and felt was important, especially since it is an issue of community and care, that it was important for him to be a part of this, this process.
Thanks, James. Obviously, this is big news for our church and the wider community here in Phoenix. You certainly have a large footprint out the door and in the door here. Maybe if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about this place and how it came, how this opportunity came to you. The question on everybody's mind, I'm sure, is were you looking to move on? Was this something you were seeking out, or did this come as big a surprise to you as it did to us?
Well, it came definitely as a big of surprise to me as it's probably coming to most of you. I didn't really seek this out. I was actually recommended by a couple of conference ministers, as I understand it, to the Back Bay individual that was doing kind of the search, their talent resource person, and to the board of directors. And so it's not something I sought out, although I was familiar with Back Bay Mission, as some of you may be familiar with Back Bay. I know Jane, one of our other moderators, her church in Texas, where she used to live, was a part of Back Bay Mission work. So Back Bay is almost 100 years old, strangely enough, as our church is just over 100 years old. But it's been on the coast for some time, and it really, we used to have 2 United Church of Christ churches down there, and they're no longer there because our churches and the preachers of those churches were a part of the Wade-In in the 1960s, the middle 60s, and the Wade-In was to desegregate the beaches in Biloxi and in the coastal area of Mississippi. And so the UCC churches end up closing their doors because the culture at the time, people who were a part of those churches and that participated in the Wade-In from the United Churches of Christ lost their jobs, and they were not able to get other jobs on the coast. And so they left the churches kind of for self-survival.
First Church has had some direct interaction with Back Bay Mission in the past, right?
Yes. Yeah, and what's, well, the part of the direct connection also is through our conference minister, who is now our national minister, right? John Dorhauer, who's had some influence in this whole process. And, you know, I'd been to Back Bay Mission on my sabbatical, on my second sabbatical, which was, I guess, a little bit over a year and a half ago, kind of losing track of time with coronavirus. But I stayed at Back Bay Mission for a week, and from there I kind of went to a few other places throughout the coast and away from the coast up in upper Mississippi and Alabama to do a little bit more research on the civil rights movement. And that's when I found out they had a new installation about the wade-ins at the beach, on the beach. And so I spent some time there at the university there in Biloxi, and also another installation at a art gallery there around the wade-ins. And so at that time, I met a few of the staff. I actually sat down with the individual, Dr. Alice Graham, who is the current executive director, who's retiring in January. I sat down with her and asked her some questions about the civil rights movement and about Mississippi and about how she sees the civil rights movement informing movements today. And so I had a little bit of understanding of Back Bay. And when this kind of came about, then I checked out what the job responsibilities were, got called for an interview, went through the interview process, and I think the Spirit's hand was definitely on the process.
Now, you said executive director is the position that they've hired you for. Is that a pastoral role? You mentioned it was affiliated with the UCC. Will you still be a pastor? Are you giving that up? Can you tell us a little bit about what that will be like, as far as you know?
That's a good point. Yeah. So they wanted a pastor. They wanted somebody that was a UCC pastor specifically because a lot of churches send groups of people down to Back Bay Mission. They have some pretty rustic housing there for individuals in kind of bunkhouses to stay and do work projects along the coast. Part of the whole goal of Back Bay is really helping people out of poverty. It's serving people that are experiencing homelessness or without shelter, case management. It's a whole range of different services helping transform people's lives. And so they were looking for somebody that was a pastor and somebody with social service experience. And for me, I kind of fit the bill because as most of you know, I took a big chunk of time out between being a Lutheran campus minister and then being a UCC minister to do a variety of work in social service and HIV and AIDS, homeless runaway youth, the LGBT community as an executive director at the LGBT Center Milwaukee. And so I actually spent more time probably in the not-for-profit world, although the church is not-for-profit, but not-for-profit world specifically in social service than I have actually in ministry. So they were specifically looking for somebody that was an ordained clergy. Alice is ordained, she's a minister. There's no worshiping community there. So my preaching will probably be as a guest preacher in churches around the area and maybe even churches around the country.
Wow, that's exciting. Now, you and I spoke a fair bit about your thought process and how you felt Spirit pulling you, and I know that this was a very difficult decision for you. Without betraying any confidence, I think it's fair to say, very hard decision. There's big things happening at First Church, and I think it's safe to say you feel the Spirit here at First Church and in Phoenix, moving through this community, and you've been excited to be a part of that. Can you share a little bit with the congregation and the wider community about some of that inner back and forth, just so we can hear a little bit about, maybe just to make us feel a little bit better that it wasn't easy to walk away?
No, not easy to walk away at all. In fact, in the United Church of Christ, clergy generally have profiles that they circulate. I did not have a current profile. And so I was not looking to go anywhere. I really excited about the future and the ministry of First Church, having been here about 7 years now. And there never seems to be a good time to leave a community of faith as a pastor. I think the best time to leave is generally when things are good and when there's some good movement. So as I was thinking this through, I was like, well, things are good at First Church. We have an associate pastor. We have a really good leadership team. We're growing. We've changed a lot as a community of faith. I had a couple people recognize that we've become a much younger community of faith over the last number of years. And so that's really, really hard. I think it's trying to be attuned to the Spirit and listening to that still small voice. And it felt as if this was a place, Back Bay Mission, where I could utilize all of the gifts and bring everything together in one place, hopefully. I think what First Church especially helped me in, or helped me to do, was really to prepare for something like this. So I'm really grateful to First Church for helping me understand how justice and spirituality work together. Because I had all this not-for-profit experience, and how do you bring that into the church? How does the church become a part of that? Even though the United Church of Christ is very much about social justice, I think for me in the last 7 years here, it was really a way to understand how that fits together, where are the intersections, and how can we as a faith community really be a powerful movement in downtown Phoenix. And so, yeah, that was a really hard struggle, a lot of prayer. I sought some guidance from individuals that I trust in Minneapolis, in Milwaukee. I actually called our national minister, John Dorhauer, and had a conversation with him. I called our local conference minister here and had a pretty deep, long conversation with Bill. I sought out a couple of close associates here, like Rabbi Shmuley, and to really help me understand where are my gifts and my abilities and where can they best be used. Not that they couldn't be used any longer here at First Church, because they certainly could have. And I love preaching. I think that's something I'm going to miss. I love leading classes, especially our Tuesday night class. This session on mystics has been incredibly deep and life-giving. And I really do enjoy the pastoral care and pastoral ministry. But this seems like a place to really be the hands and feet of Christ in the world. And it was interesting because one helpful comment by our conference minister here, Bill Lyons, actually helped me, I think, understand a little bit better how I could be used in this position. And he said, you know, James, I think this is really the church of the future, Back Bay Mission, because they're being the hands and feet of Christ in the world. They don't have a worshiping community, but they're living worship out by what they do and how they act in the world. And so I think that's a very, very good point. And that really helped me kind of understand.
So definitely lots of mixed emotions, obviously. I think it's really helpful for us to hear, about how First Church has helped you grow and helped you feel God and the Spirit calling you to be Jesus' hands and feet in the world. But of course, like I said, so many mixed emotions. We're torn between, wanting to keep you all for ourselves here in Phoenix and wanting to support you as you follow God's call towards this new ministry opportunity. So I'd have to say, what can we here in Phoenix, the First Church community, what can we do to support you and make you feel loved? And we never want to let you go completely. So what can we do to continue to support you as you move into this new part of your journey?
Yeah, and Chris, I would affirm that. I already kind of spent a lot of time crying because my heart is, my heart and my energy is really invested in this community. As and I think what First Church can do best. I think it's going to be difficult, especially because it'll be the first part of February that I leave. Probably the last Sunday in January will be my farewell sermon. We'll probably still kind of be in the throes of the pandemic, which seems like a really crazy time to move or start something new. But I feel like I've never really shrinked back from a challenge. So I think to affirm, I would encourage people to go on the Back Bay Mission website to check it out more fully, to see a little bit more what they do on their Facebook, so y'all have an understanding of how well we're probably matched up, right? I think I have some anxiety and fear around executive director type of title, because that means probably I have quite a few people to manage, but I've talked to the staff, I've talked to the lead staff last week, and they're a pretty empowered group of people that really have a lot of commitment to this work that they do at Back Bay. And so I think First Church I think, can send love and prayers, and we commit to stay in relationship because I'm going to be working with a wider church, which means one way the First Church could support this is y'all could come down and do a work trip, right?
Maybe explain a little bit about what you mean when you say the wider church. That may be a foreign concept.
Yeah, the wider church. So the board of directors, they're from all over the country here. And churches from Kansas and from Minnesota and from Wisconsin and Connecticut and Texas and Phoenix and Arizona, right? All over the country come down there for a week or 2 weeks to do work trips. And so part of this serving the wider church is having more influence with more churches within the UCC, probably at a national level. I'll be doing some organizing potentially with conference ministers even, according to John Dorhauer, and will afford an opportunity to deepen my work around dismantling racism also. And Grace, who's filming this, had mentioned something about the New South, right? And in many ways, you probably know that finally Mississippi got rid of the rebel flag and they now have a magnolia flower on the flag. And so to be a part of some of the change in the New South, on the coast of Mississippi, which is about 350,000 people, the whole coastal area about 62 miles. It's certainly not as big as Phoenix, but I think sending me with prayers and love, maybe send some donations now and then. I'm sure Barbie and Jane would not like to hear that. But just being and keeping your ear attuned to what's happening at Back Bay, as I will keep my ear attuned to what's happening here at First Church. Because in many ways, much of what we do here at First Church will be done there. I think one of the first things that will be a task when I arrive actually will be, there's no shelter along the coast for people experiencing homelessness. Back Bay does have a day center where people can get a shower and wash their clothes and be there for the day, but again, then they have to sleep under bridges or on the beach or wherever they can sleep, right? So I think that's going to be one of the first things. And so I think my experience here too, working with Cass, has really served me well, that we learn from each other. So I think I'll continue to keep some of those contacts here and continue to learn from folks in Phoenix as we kind of do this work together in the UCC.
That's awesome. I know I could keep asking you questions all day long, and I'm sure I won't even scratch the surface of what people, want to say and express to you. But I think it's a good idea to keep this relatively short. It's a lot for people to hear, a lot of big news, a lot of big change. And I think more important than anything else is for you to know that we do love you and we support you. And as personally heart-wrenching as this was to hear, I do, in every conversation I've had with you personally, I hear the Spirit calling you so profoundly to do this. I feel like First Church, is sort of the last birthing place that you've, the last, nest that you've found before you go full circle. People that know you will know that you talk about beginning in Mississippi, and I think it's fitting that, as you move on from here, having grown so much and made such an impact, that it's a great story in the heart to just hear how God has used you and to know how God will continue to use you. And we're so excited to follow your journey and hopefully continue to be influenced by you and influence you as you make big moves nationally and maybe even internationally. So is there anything, go on. Is there anything you'd like to share as well?
Probably just the last thing I really want to share, and this is really interesting because this came from my conversation with John Dorhauer. I said, so John, how do you know, right? How do you know when Spirit is calling you away and to someplace else? Because I think that's the very hard part. And I think every place, and I would encourage y'all to think about how you live life, and wherever God or Spirit places you, to just allow yourself to grow, expand, be challenged by whatever it is that's in front of you, right? and whatever life is kind of giving you. And I asked him that question. I said, so how do you know? How do you know when Spirit is calling? Because sometimes it can be really difficult to hear Spirit's voice. And I have to say, during the middle of this pandemic, I think it's been harder for some of us, maybe easier for some of us. But he said, listen to Spirit, listen to what Spirit is saying through others. And then as he said that, I realized that about 8 people in a row had said these same exact words to me, my confidants and people that I shared this with seeking guidance. They said, James, it sounds like you're coming full circle. It sounds like the Spirit is bringing you full circle. And to me, that was a really, really profound statement I heard. And one of the persons that said that to me was Jane, our moderator, right? And I was like, wow. So this is full circle. And then I think about the sacredness of circles. And I think about the sacredness of circles in all spiritual traditions and what a beautiful thing that is. And so God does, right? Guide and direct. The Spirit guides and directs. And it's not to say one is better than the other. It's just that we move into places and spaces where Spirit is calling us to continue to grow, continue to expand, and finding that circle of life. So that's kind of the final words that I'd like to share.
Thank you for that. Thank you. That is profound.
Yeah. And I would encourage people to...
You never stop being pastoral, so we appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, and I would appreciate if people would just go to Back Bay Mission, check it out, so you know the depth and the amazing things that they do. And I'm a bit trepid, in stepping out, but I also have faith and hope that Spirit goes with me, as Spirit goes with all of us, and as Spirit will be with First Church here in Phoenix.
Thank you. Thank you. And people will have questions, obviously. I think we have allocated some time for folks to come and to be able to join together and ask questions. And obviously people will call you. I don't know if you can get away from that. But we'll share how the next time we speak will go.
I think it'll be Sunday at Coffee Chat, which is probably about 11:30, 11:45 noon, right? You can get on Coffee Chat and ask questions and grill me if you'd like, right?
Yeah, give him what for. Right. Well, thanks for your time, James. This has been great. And
oh, thank you.
Our heart is with you always. So don't ever forget that.
And my hearts are with you all, okay? Thank you.